As we were coming down the elevator with the nurse and headed toward the front door of the hospital, the nurse turned to us, handed us our baby, and said, "Here you go." Jenny and I kind of looked at each other quizzically and said, "So what are we supposed to do now?" It was in that moment that I realized that the nurse somehow entrusted in us to take care of this baby, and moreover, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Oi! Write a sermon, okay. Fulfill some Nusach requirements, no big deal. But where was taking care of a baby in senior seminar? Might want to add that for next year. As parents, I along with Jenny, we are somehow responsible for building a life for our daughter, helping her build her vocabulary, develop her social skills, and through our modeling, raise her to be a young woman committed to a life of kindness and Torah. Parenting is a complex problem. For complex problems, there is no straightforward solution. There's no recipe or specific path to follow. Unanticipated difficulties are frequent, and success requires a talented group of people and specialized expertise. Other complex problems might be building a skyscraper to withstand an earthquake. Or maybe it's getting our country out of a recession. Or maybe it's re-envisioning the conservative movement. And of course, raising a child. How to build a mishkan, how to build the tabernacle, is also an example of a complex problem. As a postscript to the biggest event in the Jewish tradition in our religious lives, the revelation at Sinai, God sends us off with his own version of, "Here you go." Sensing the look of terror in our faces, what are we supposed to do now? So God gives us a building project. Nearly 500 verses in the Torah, over half of Sefer Shemot, the book of Exodus, is devoted to these details of how to build this Mishkan. And it's easy to fall into the trap of focusing on the litany of details, the elaborate checklists, as a response to the simple problem of how to build a few decorative items. All definitely feasible with the meticulous instructions laid out in the Torah. You simply go to IKEA, pick up the box you need, and the tools and instructions are in there. Right? These next parshiot, these next portions that we're going to read, somehow there are a lot of details there. But we cannot miss the bigger picture. Just like thinking that any complex task can be reduced to a series of administrative duties. The Torah's description of building the Mishkan presents for us a paradigm for how we ought to approach complex problems. With any complicated problem, we need to first come to the realization that sometimes we don't know what to do, how to approach it, that we might feel overwhelmed, stressed, or even confused. There's a midrash taught in Bamidbar Rabbah with a parallel in the Bavli, Masechet Menachot, that says that even Moshe was not immune to these feelings. Shlosha dvarim hayu kashim lo leMoshe. There were three things that were difficult for Moshe, that overwhelmed him. One of these three things was the menorah. When Moshe received the instructions to build the menorah, he was lost. He didn't know what to do. So how does God help Moshe resolve this complication? The Midrash goes on to say, Moses, lecha b'tzalel v'hu ya'aseh otah. Go to B'tzalel, which is loosely translated as, B'tzalel will help you out with the administrative duties, and he's going to function as your artistic director. And similarly, we learn later in Bamidbar, in the book of Numbers, that the priests led by Aaron, Moses' brother, are charged with the responsibility of the maintenance and upkeep of the menorah. This was a puzzle that no one person could solve on his or her own. Everyone contributed skills and materials. The rabbis created a backstory for B'tzalel's involvement, suggesting that all of this was a way of responding to Moshe feeling overwhelmed. But what's even more striking about these midrashim describing Moshe's confusion over learning how to construct the menorah is that the midrash prefaces the suggestion to seek Bezalel's help and assistance with the words Ad shehora lo hakadosh baruch hu be'etzba'o. Seeing as Moses had been inundated with details, God pointed the way by following this massive blueprint. God literally showed Moshe with God's finger, be'etzba'o. Now you might say that God was literally trying to point Moshe to seek Bezalel's help. Yet one could also read this as God's anthropomorphic finger. The same one that was used to bring about the plagues, the same one that brought the Israelites out of slavery. It was now being used to guide Moshe in the right direction. Imagine Moses, our leader, someone who's supposed to have all the answers, confused. The image of God holding Moses' hand and our own in times of fear and vulnerability is a powerful one. It's what parents do when raising children, and it's exactly what our children need from us as parents. Whether it's holding our child's hand as we cross the street, picking them up when they fall down, or consoling that screaming baby when we have no idea what's wrong. Renowned author and physician Dr. Atul Gawande wrote a book called The Checklist Manifesto, How to Get Things Done, where he claims that the solution to a complex problem is as simple as a checklist. He tells the story of how most modern buildings, starting in the Middle Ages, they were constructed with the theme of a master builder. One person who would be in charge of the engineering, the construction, all of the details. One person in charge of the master list. These master builders were in charge of building things as early as the cathedral at Notre Dame, and even as recent as the United States Capitol building. But by the middle of the 20th century, the master builder model ceased to exist because of the sophistication and complexity at every step of the construction process. One person cannot know everything there is to know. We cannot get the job done alone. The checklist simply became too much to manage. The lone master builder, much like Moses, simply became overwhelmed. Being the person in charge of this complex project is scary. A person in this situation must lay awake at night feeling isolated, burdened with the complexity of these projects that they are attempting to accomplish. Yet the Midrash says that we are never alone, even during our most vulnerable moments, when things are most complex. God can be present for us. Building the Mishkan, like with raising a child or facing any other challenging task or project, can only be done be'etzba'o, in a hands-on interpersonal way, by us as parents and by God, Avinu, our Father.